Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Isn't that a profound statement?
I am a powerful manifester. You have to meet the vibration in order to draw the thing to you that you want to come. You can't want it so much that you fear that you won't get it. It doesn't come to you that way. You have to do it, and then you have to put it in.
I have so many affirmations that I do, and I've done affirmations for a long, long time. Your thoughts create your life. And so you have to think positive thoughts all the time. You have to force yourself to think positive thoughts at times. I am open and receptive to all the goodness and abundance the universe has to offer. I am good on my own. I love myself. I love you, Jennifer. I love the universe. The universe loves me. God loves me. I am youthful and timeless at every age. I am enough.
I wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, and I put it in my wallet, and I kept it there, and it deteriorated and stuff. And just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out that I was going to make $10 million on Dumb and Dumber. Maybe.
Dumb and Dumber, yeah. So you visualize yourself like... Visualization works.
So when people begin to say, what is my intention? And make it clear on their intention. And they write it down. Now the research shows that less than 2% of the Americans actually write their intentions or goals down. The ones that do actually write them down, they have an 80% chance of reaching those goals if they write them down. So when you write something down, you're telling your brain that you mean it. It's a direction that you're moving, and it has to be ongoing. And it's a to-be statement. A to-be statement is something that you're evolving into. Once you get clear on your intention, you're sponsoring thoughts, the list of reasons why you want to be healthy. Because those sponsoring thoughts are really going to be the driving force to get you going in that direction. If it's healthy, you may have vitality. You may want to look better. If it's wealth, you want freedom. That's what you really want. You want freedom to do whatever you want, right? So when you begin to define your intention and you couple it with a sponsoring thought, now you're giving your body a taste emotionally of what that future is going to be like. Now, the next step is to plan your actions. Master your day, one day at a time. So now you've already dismantled an old part of yourself, and you say, today, the thought I'm going to have is that I am a genius and I accomplish everything. Or I live in no time, and the universe provides for me. The universe lives in my favor. What behaviors am I going to demonstrate? I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out, or I'm going to read that article on success, or I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to make a choice. And then I'm going to elevate my emotional state. I'm going to keep my energy up the entire day today. Just that simple process, you've already changed on the biological level. Now, if you get up and you prime, review, and remind yourself who you're going to be, then the next step is you warmed up your brain and body to be in that personality. Get your behavior to match your intentions. Now take it out for a test drive and accomplish what you set out to do during the day. In other words, when you get your behaviors to match your intentions and your actions equal to your thoughts, you get your mind and body working together. Now you are mastering exactly what you set out to do. And now when you begin to experience the effects of your choices, those new experiences then begin to reaffirm the emotion that you created from your sponsoring thoughts. Now the loop is starting to change, and your choices begin to become a new habit. Track your changes. Take a moment and journal, or have a little board on your wall and say, I got up earlier, I did a 20-minute walk, I did deep breathing exercises before I went to bed, I feel great, I'm going to do it again. And my definition of a genius is being uncomfortable and being okay with it. And I can transmute that energy into clarity or gratitude, that I can get my energy up even though there's chaos around me, then I'm filling that void between the old self and the new self with information. And when you change your energy, you change your life. In other words, you're so busy being elevated and know you can't predict what's going to happen. You're just very clear you're not going to go back to those familiar cravings and familiar urges. And finally, cue your environment. Take a moment and on your dashboard of your car, or on the desk at work, or on the mirror in your bathroom, or on the refrigerator. Remind yourself what your future is. Simple little cues, simple words or pictures. And if you keep your conscious mind on what you want, your subconscious mind will take you there. The hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. So you can say to yourself, okay, I have some pretty tough thoughts I have to overcome today. Let's just put them out and drag them out for observation right now, so I know that when they come up, I'm aware of them and they're not me. That's the old self. And if you begin to look at your choices and the behaviors and you say, you know what, I've been a victim for too long. I'm not going to complain to anyone or anything about anything today. I'm going to make excuses for myself. Those are the two things I'm not going to do. Just not going to go there. If you were to take a minute and really begin to ask yourself, what part of my old self can I not bring to my new future? Because if I want to be a healthy or wealthy person or a genius, I can't bring these thoughts. I can't. That's in alignment with my future. So when you begin to realize that this is the person I'm going to create, these are the things that I have to leave behind. That simple analogy will begin to help you get clear on the direction that you're moving and allow that energy to push you. Now that energy is like the flame on the alchemist's crucible. It's going to turn base metals into gold. It's going to remove the dross. And I think our purpose in life is really to remove these layers, these masks, these habits and emotions that block the flow of the divine within us.
The third premise: any dominating idea, plan, or purpose held in the mind through repetition of thought, any dominating idea, plan, or purpose held in the mind through repetition of thought and emotionalized with a burning desire for its realization is taken over by the subconscious section of the mind and acted upon through whatever natural and logical means that may be available. Now, in that paragraph, you've got a tremendous lesson in psychology. If you want the mind to pick up an idea and to form a habit so that the mind will automatically act upon that idea, you've got to tell the mind what you want over and over and over again. No end to it, unless you put some feeling back of it, unless you believe it. And incidentally, if you tell yourself anything often enough, you'll get to where you will believe it, even a lie. It's funny, isn't it? But it happens to be true. You know, there are people who tell little white lies, and sometimes they're not so white at that, until they get to where they believe them themselves. Now, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between right or wrong. It doesn't know the difference between positive or negative. It doesn't know the difference between a penny or $1 million. It doesn't know the difference between success and failure. It'll accept any statement that you keep repeating to it by thoughts or by words or by any other means. And incidentally, it's up to you in the beginning to lay out your definite purpose, write it out so that it can be understood, memorize it, and start repeating it day in and day out until your subconscious mind picks it up and automatically acts upon it. You can't expect to undo overnight what you've been doing to your subconscious mind back down through the years by allowing negative thoughts to get into it. You can't expect that to happen overnight. But you will find that if you emotionalize any plan that you send over to your subconscious mind and repeat it in a state of enthusiasm, and back it up with a spirit of faith. If you do that, the subconscious mind not only acts more quickly, but it acts more definitely and more positively.
I'm really enjoying this workshop from a different perspective than I've ever experienced one of your seminars from before. In part, it's because now when people come into the hot seat and ask their question, the answer that you give them is the experience I've already had. And I'm feeling more momentum of, I really am empowered, whereas I wasn't before. And I really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that before.
It isn't as difficult as anyone is making.
It's so damn easy to have an amazing life.
Yes. That should be the banner. It's so damn easy to have an amazing life. That's an expectation that will serve you. That is an expectation that will serve you. It's done. It's done. My lover is there. My money is there. My good feeling body is there. My recovery has taken place. My abundance is there. My clarity is there. My stability is there. My vitality is there. My flexibility is there. It's there. It's there. It's there. It's there. It's there. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. And the only reason that I want to talk about it is not to make it happen, because it's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. I don't have to make anything happen. It's done. It's done. It's done. I don't have to make it happen. It's done. It's done. It's done. I talk about it because I like talking about it. I talk about it because it feels good to talk about it. I talk about it because talking about it is natural to me. I talk about what's done. It's done. It's done. I talk about what's done. It's done. I talk about what's done. It's done. I talk about what's done because talking about what's done causes me to feel good as I'm talking about what's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.
When you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. Number one, take some time out of your busy lives to disconnect from your world. Shut your cell phone off, turn the TV off, power down your computer, sit your body down for a few minutes and close your eyes. Number one. Number two, take some breaths and center yourself. When you center your attention into the present moment, you have more energy to create with. When your mind wanders to the predictable future or the familiar past, that's normal. Just become aware of it. Keep working on settling yourself back down into the present moment. When you're in the present moment, you're the most creative. Number three, ask yourself, can I be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past? What do I want in my life? And take the time to answer the question. As you begin to contemplate and think about the answer to the question, you're changing your brain. When you make your brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, that's the beginning steps of changing your mind. Next, decide on the emotions you'll feel when you begin to create that future. And teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like. And don't get up until you begin to feel those emotions. Next step, step number 4, rehearse in your mind who you're going to be when you open your eyes, the things you have to do, the choices you have to make, the steps you have to take, and review them over and over again. Number 5, you can't go to the future holding on to the biology of your past. Decide what thoughts you can bring to your future. Write them down. Thoughts like, I can't, it's too hard, I'll never change, I'll start tomorrow, what's wrong with me, it's someone else's fault. Decide on what behaviors or actions or unconscious habits you have to change. How do you talk? Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you make excuses? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Just become so conscious of those behaviors that you'll never go unconscious again. And lastly, you have to decide what emotions no longer belong in your future. That means if you want to be wealthy, you can't take lack. If you want to be healthy, you can't take insecurity or fear. You got to begin to condition your body to a new mind. If you do this every single day, your personality creates your personal reality. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Change any one of those things and you change your life. And begin to measure the effects of you it cause. Give it a shot. So when we begin to overcome those emotions of stress that are highly addictive, the body is no longer being tormented like an addict. That is when the body to liberate energy. And that's when our heart starts to open. And that's when we start to believe in possibility again. So If our personality creates our personal reality, we make a decision first. We examine who we've been, and I call it crossing the river of change, from the old self to the new self. And if you understand that that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create in, that's the place you want to create in, and not to fear it, but to embrace it. And your body's craving the familiar chemicals that it's addicted to, then you might want to say when you're in that place, well, the best way to predict my future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. Now, this perfect place of creation is where people begin to do the uncommon. This is where their soul begins to speak to them. This is where they see a greater purpose for themselves in their lives, and they're no longer playing by the small-minded games any longer, because they're connected to some bigger vision in the future. I think transformation is really the one thing that I'm more passionate about than anything else. And so I think number one, taking time out of our busy day for ourselves is the greatest service that we can do for ourselves, for our family, for the people we work with, and for our community. Now, if most people's attention is on their external environment, on their body, and on time, and they wake up every morning and they get out of bed and they do the same thing they've been doing for the last 20 years, then their body's already programmed into a predictable future. Their body's already on autopilot. They have a thought of the coffee pot, and the next thing they know, they have coffee in their hand. They have a thought of the shower, the next thing they know, they're in the shower. They have a thought about going to work, the next thing they know, they're in the car. So their body is following their mind. If they're living by the same emotions every single day, then their body, for the most part, is in the past, because emotions are a record of the past. So finding the sweet spot of the present moment in our meditation is so highly important, because the body has been trained to be in the future. So then most people, when they take their meditation and they stick it in as another thing to do so they don't have to feel guilty, that's not the answer either. Working with your body and understanding that it's the animal, and we do this in our workshops. We make people, we don't make them, we ask them in their meditations to really get to that point where they're unfolding in that infinite field of potentials as thought alone. In other words, if you're going to heal yourself by thought alone, or create something in your life by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone. This is the key element where all of a sudden now, when you keep practicing bringing your body back into the present moment, and you become aware that it's thinking about, well, what about this thing I have to do, and this plane I have to catch, and this contract I have to sign, and that person I have to call, that's a predictable future. And you become aware that you're investing your energy into that reality, because where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Or you're living by some emotion of impatience or frustration or vigilance, then you're siphoning energy out of the present moment, and you have no energy to create with. So every time you become conscious that you're moving out of the present moment, and just like riding an unbridled stallion, every time you bring that body back into the present moment and you relax it back down into the present moment and you surrender into nothing, every time you do that, you're reconditioning your body to a new mind. In other words, you're not allowing your body to become the mind. Now, people will say, well, that's going to take a lot of work. And I say to them, well, what's the alternative? Nothing is going to help you to get to the present moment but you. And if you practice being present every single day in your meditations, you will be more present in your life and less preoccupied with that worst case scenario, that moment where something could go wrong, and living by those hormones of stress. And your body then finally starts to trust you. And when your body finally starts to trust you is the moment it's not worried about the unknown. The unknown is no longer dangerous. The unknown is actually an adventure. So we do the work in teaching people how to find the present moment. And when they begin to distinguish between when you're present and when you're not present, and they're able to do that well enough, they'll know the moment it's time to create. Now, this funny thing happens if you really lock into the present moment. All the things you thought you wanted, you no longer want, because you feel so whole in that moment, it's impossible to want. Now, then the next step is to teach your brain and body emotionally what a new future is going to feel like. In order for you to do that, or in order for us to do that, we have to become conscious about how unconscious we are. And we've been talking about that. The more you don't allow that thought, that behavior, that emotion to slip by your awareness, the more prone you are to be Gandalf on the bridge. And that monster that he was facing symbolically was all of his energy that was invested in the ego and in the old self. And when the God within us stands up and says, "You may not pass ever again," that's the moment that the soul begins to speak. And so we do the work every day to present ourselves as a greater expression of ourselves every day. And in the beginning, it will feel unnatural, but I swear there's been hundreds of people, once they start seeing the effects and they find true joy within them because they're pleased with themselves and they got beyond themselves. I mean, in the brain scans that we studied with people, I can tell you that when people get beyond themselves, they are so incredibly powerful. And by the way, they tell the story based on those emotions. And Scientific American said 3 months ago that 50% of everything that people talk about in their past is a lie. It's not the truth, because they have a different brain today than they did at the time of the event. So getting people beyond their past, I think, and getting them into the present moment begins to liberate the most amount of energy. So then, how do we begin to become supernatural? We have to begin to do what's unnatural. And when everybody else is in lack and in poverty, that is the time to give. When everybody else is in fear and worried, that's the time to demonstrate courage. When everybody else is judging and warring, that's the time to show love and compassion. And if we keep doing the unnaturals long enough, sooner or later we'll begin to become supernatural. So our soul's journey then is to step out of the quagmire and the limited beliefs and perceptions that keep us playing in this limited realm, this limited density, where we are matter trying to change matter. Once we get a taste of the divine, and that divine, again, we've measured this over and over again. When you are that thought in that infinite space, when the brain is perceiving space and no longer perceiving objects, it gets very organized. It gets very coherent. And when the brain gets coherent, we get coherent. When the heart gets coherent, we love way more. And that's when we begin to emulate the divine. So over and over again, as we begin to climb out of these limited states, and we break free from those survival emotions that keep us feeling more like matter and less like energy, the side effect of all of that is becoming more energy and less matter. And the field around our bodies when we're living in stress is about 3-4 inches in size. Open your heart, it can be up to 9 meters wide. We measured it. And so then when you begin to open your heart, you feel connected to something greater. That's the beginning. That's when the soul says, now I have infinite possibilities to experience, and I get to select as a free-willed individual where I want to place my attention. That's when we're liberated. So I think it's a great time for us to begin to really embody this information. When you can find an identity of yourself in the quietness and solitude of your own presence, that's when you're no longer seduced by the external world, and that's when you begin to experience true freedom.